Hello and welcome to Herstory within History. I'm Pastor Joy Oguntimein, and I am super excited that you've decided to tune in for our conversation today. Our theme for this year is Gifted with Purpose. We believe that all of us are gifted, that God has given us talents, skills, and passions, and He has called us. You don't need a title, you don't have to come from a certain background. He has called us to use those gifts to make a difference. I am joined today by two amazing people, and my hope is that if you don't know them already, by the end of this conversation, you will know them and you will love them. I do, because I love them. I do.
Love you too.
Will you please introduce yourselves to the people, tell us your name, your role in Zion, and in 30 seconds, describe yourself.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Pastor Joy. My name is Maaden Jones. I'm the Director of Communication and Marketing here at Zion Church. I would describe myself as a storyteller and a champion for healing through hospitality and self-love.
Nice, a champion.
Thank you.
You know, whenever the first person goes, you're like, okay, well, let me figure out what I'm going to say about me and how God's wired me. So I'm Michelle McKinney, and I am the assistant to Pastor Larry Page at the Zion Landover campus. In terms of how God's wired me, I am a strategic at heart, and I like to call myself a dream architect. We're almost a dream doula. I help women specifically, but I can, all people, to figure out what has God put you here for and how do you boldly live that out.
So like I said, if you don't know them already, by the end of this conversation, you need to know them, love them, follow them, and get connected to them. So one of the things that I've realized in life, that when it comes to using my gift, when it comes to pursuing God, I have to be grounded by something. So whether that's a principle, whether that's a philosophy, a motto that helps me to stay focused and not distracted. What is that for you all? Do you have like a life slogan or some kind of piece of advice that somebody told you that helps you to think, okay, in this opportunity, yep, I need to do this because this is related to what God's calling me to do?
Sure. You want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, of course. So I don't know if it's necessarily a life slogan of mine, but it's something that I share with people all the time, is that wherever God has me, if it's at a corporation or a nonprofit or wherever I am, that it's not a job. I think that everything is an assignment, because I think when you go into something with the thought that it's a job, it's like, oh, I gotta go in here. But when you have the understanding and the embrace that it's an assignment, that God has strategically placed you at that place. And when He strategically places you, it can be just sometimes for one person, sort of like He goes back for the one. He will sometimes send you to a place for the one. And so it's an assignment. And in that space, I feel like your assignment isn't complete until one of two, actually both things happen. And that you have poured into everybody and everything that you were supposed to be there for. There's a book by the Nordstrom brothers that they give to their employees. It's called Leave It Better Than You Found It, right?
I like that.
And so you should have left that organization better than you found it at day one, right? And then it's not just for you to pour into, but whatever you're supposed to be poured into. And so whatever it is that you're supposed to learn, whether it's, because sometimes it's not just skill development. I've been places where it's been my character development that needed to happen.
That's
hard, right? Because the skill development, that's technical,
right?
But the character development, that is emotional, because you can easily put up a defense. So for me, it's that space that it's not a job, it's an assignment, and you should embrace it.
Yeah.
I love that, because I feel as that many of us listen to here, we're not entrepreneurs. There are definitely a lot. A lot of you do go to a 9 to 5, 8 to 4. And I think when you come with that perspective, it changes how you show up. It changes how you interact with your colleagues, with your supervisors, because you realize I am not just an assistant. I'm not just a director, a supervisor. I am an agent of God on mission. Like, I've chosen to accept this mission and I have to complete it. So I think it also allows you to be more purposeful, right? So it's not just day in, day out. It's like, what's my purpose for today? What about you, Maddie?
My motto is simple: love God, love self, love others. I've always been in the space of doing work to help women in particular heal. My background is in community and public health. But my anchor statement, my anchor scripture is Matthew 22:37-39. It says, the first and greatest commandment is this: love the Lord God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. And the second is like it. It's to love others as you love yourself.
Yes.
And the part that's often overlooked, whether it's church or anywhere else, it's love God, love others. Love God, love others. Treat others well. But we skip the part that says as yourself. So really the model for how we can show up if we're in this space where we're helping others, whether it's through healing work or strategic work or otherwise, is first having a blueprint from which to know how to love others. And that's based in our love for ourselves. And the love for ourselves blueprint comes from God's love, right? Because we were created in His image.
Absolutely.
We are divine. We are God-like, and we should be striving to be Christ-like in all that we do. So that's my,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. And as you were talking, one thing that came to mind was this idea of you have to start with God's love. And it just reminds us this idea that we focus a lot on self-care, which is important, but soul care, I think, is also important. So if my soul isn't healed, if I'm broken, if I'm drained, if I'm tired, how am I going to love people? How am I even going to understand how to love myself? I think that also builds our empathy, right?
Yeah.
So as we learn to care for ourselves, as we begin to understand, first of all, how God loves us, how He cares for us, now I can care for myself and I can better care for other people. Wow, that's so good. All right, so we're going to dive in talking about gifts now. So for each of you, when did you first begin to get a sense of, oh, I'm gifted at this. Like, I am legit talented. This isn't some fluke or one-off, but I consistently do X well. What did that look like for you?
My whole life.
I came out the womb gifted.
That's right.
Literally, my gifts around hospitality and showing up to serve and love others have been since I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, wanting to set up dinner parties and host things and do things. I think it was probably in my late 20s that I realized that hospitality gift was related to my skill and my training in healing, community health, and women's health. I didn't connect the two. I felt that one was just a hobby and a joy that I had, and the other was my work and my purpose, but I always separated them because I didn't see the connection. But it was after some challenging experiences in my own life that I realized that so much of my own healing was happening at the dinner table with my girlfriends. And I was like, wow, this is my therapy couch. This is my church. You know, that group had become that for me. And I realized that so many of us, cross cultures, cross demographics, find healing at the table. So for me, I think the light came on with the marriage of the two probably in my early 30s, but the gift, it was always there. It was always there. Yeah.
All right, I want you to talk, Michelle, because I know you have something to say, but I do want to highlight what you said about the marriage of the two. I think culturally, because of terms like work-life balance and I need a vacation from my job, we're always separating ourselves as opposed to taking the time to say, what makes up the different pieces of me, right? To say, how can I bring this together? If I'm gifted at hospitality, how do I bring that to my job? Maybe I do volunteer to like host monthly birthday celebrations, or I'm intentional about having lunch with other people. And so to those of you listening, if you're thinking about your gifts and how to use them, first of all, I love what Maddie says, that you noticed that you liked having play dinners. What are the things as a child that you legit love to do, regardless of what people told you? Maybe you like to talk and people told you that you talk too much or something, or you like to tell stories. Maddie, there she goes. Or maybe we called it lying, which is a thing, but maybe the truth was that you were a gifted storyteller, but it wasn't submitted to the Holy Spirit. So as you're figuring out your gifts, think about the things that from childhood kind of categorize you and defined you, that you still love to do and that you can bring to your work.
That's really good.
All right, Michelle, what about you? How did you start to know, or how do you, since you work with women who are building dreams, how do you begin to help them figure out, this is your gift, this is you?
Yeah, you and Maddie have set it up perfect, right? Because it's exactly that. Because whenever we're in the coaching space to figure out what is it I'm supposed to do, I think the first challenge is that it's an understanding is that it's just not one thing. I believe that your life is a package of things. And so the place that we started is exactly where you guys have said, exactly what Maddie has talked about, is let's go back first. And I think even as parents or caretakers of small children, it's important to start paying attention to what are they doing, what are they into, right? At the same time, part of the trap that you can fall into, so for myself, I was a person that when I was in grade school, at second grade, I would stay behind class and I like help the teacher in the classroom. And then in exchange for payment, I would say, can I have the extra books? And I would take those books home and I would have my siblings sit down and I would be their teacher and I have a grade book and the whole thing. Now, if that gifting and that passion isn't channeled properly, one might pigeonhole you and say, oh, she's supposed to be a teacher.
here.
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
Let's pay attention to, let's not put somebody directly into that space, but let's pay attention to what the gift is.
Yeah.
And so when we call backwards to see, okay, what were you doing back then? And what could some of your parents or whoever your caretakers say? Oh, she up there doing that thing. She's been up there for hours. What are those set package of things? And so what I like to do is once we have an idea of that, of your gifts, those are the things that you did nothing to earn, that they were just given to you. And then with education and experience, they become even better, right? And so I like to look at it from the space of, okay, so let's define what is your life purpose statement in this season of your life, right? And so what that's comprised of is your sweet spot, that I believe it is your gifts, which we just talked about. It's your passion, which is what is the people group or cause that you would just, you have a burden for, right? And you would give up your life, your time, your resources, your equity in terms of what your pay is and that sort of deal. So that's passion. So that's that sacrifice. And that's what that word basically is, the root of, is that sacrifice, that suffering, right? And then the last thing is the problem. What are the problems that exist in the world that you're like, oh God, me.
I want to solve it.
Even if I'm not the leader in it, oh God, put me on a team to be able to solve that, right? And so what we look at is we create this life purpose statement from looking at the gifts, the passion, and the problem. And in this season of life, that is the life purpose statement that you really should be anchoring where your energy is going.
Yeah, and I want to put a little highlight under the piece that you said about pigeonholing children into a vocation.
Come on.
A lot of times, a lot of us suffer from feeling as though our validity, our value is tied to our work, right? And our being able to be productive, whether it's our vocation or our title, or whether it's our work as a mother or a wife or whatever, it's always tied to what we can do and what we can produce, not just who we are. So when you asked me to describe myself in 30 seconds, I was very intentional, and I've been very intentional about not describing myself by what I do or how I relate to others, but starting to unpack and learn about who I am and how I'm gifted.
Yes.
Your gifts are not necessarily tied to what you produce or your vocation. So it might translate into being a teacher, but it could translate 999 other ways, right? So I think that's important for us to think about. Like, it's not always about what you can produce or what you can deliver, especially in our society, which is, capitalistic. It's based on, entrepreneurship and all the glorification of work, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And okay, so we're not going to preach because this is not Sunday, but just for 30 seconds, I am reminded of in Mark chapter 1, when Jesus first steps on the scene and he's baptized by John the Baptist. Jesus has not done anything yet. He hasn't healed, he hasn't fed the multitude, yet God comes as a voice and says, "This is my son with whom I'm well pleased." That has spoken to me over the last couple of months because it's like, Jesus hadn't earned a well pleased. And so many of us are living our lives, not even really using our gifts or walking in purpose because we're trying to earn a well pleased. And it's like, you're already loved. You're already accepted. God is just inviting you into his story. So you don't have to overwork. You don't have to prove yourself. Just be who he's called you to be. Don't try to fit in people's box. Don't try to follow somebody else's dream. God, what is it that you've called me to do? I'm going to accept your grace and walk. And I'm not living to prove it. I'm not living for acceptance. I'm living from acceptance.
Good. And that's back to that God, self, others. When you talk about love, I am able to love myself just as I am because I know God loves me just as I am. So it takes those conditions off. It takes me having to feel validated or affirmed by what I produce, because my platform for how I love myself is not based on what the world tells me. It's based on the fact that my Father loves me and he's pleased with me just as I am.
You just freed somebody. I'm just going to put that out there.
I want to add to what Maddie is saying, right? And the conversation we're having, because it's so important, as you said, not to pigeon yourself into these roles, because the roles will evolve and change.
That's right.
And so when we talk about that life purpose statement that I'm talking about, in gifts, passion, and problem, my opinion and my belief is that the gifts will probably remain throughout the course of your life. You'll pick up new things, but in terms of what God has gifted you with, that will probably remain. But the thing that will alternate and shift and rotate is that passion and the problem, because you'll experience things, you'll become to awareness of things. The world will change, your life will change, and so those passions and things that you were passionate about 5 years ago may not be the same thing. And so that role whole part that Maddie's talking about, even from the standpoint, if you identify yourself always as mother, always as friend, those roles also can change. And so what can happen for us is, I've always identified myself as mother. Then what happens when my children go off, and then now I've lost my identity of who I was.
It's wrapped up in someone else.
Exactly. It was wrapped up in someone else. And so it's important, what Maddie's talking about is that you have to have a clear understanding of who God has wired me to be and what has he called me to do, and be open, palms up and open to how he wants to continue to evolve, so that when he says, hey, I need to send you over there, because he'll give you those I think small whispers, say, hey, this is what I need you to do today, and the next year, so you'll be in different places, but he's always strategic in being able to use the gifts, the passion, and the problems to do his good work.
That's great.
Listen, if y'all not taking notes, I really don't even know why you're here listening. Like, I just don't understand it. All right, so you mentioned about God being strategic. And so one of the things that I thought about in planning this was I thought about Esther. For those who don't know, short story, Esther is an orphan in the Bible. She lost her mother and father. She was taken from her homeland, went through a beauty contest and all this stuff, and was chosen to be the queen. She's young. So keep in mind that Esther is not some 40, 30-year-old. She's probably in her teens, maybe at most in her early 20s. Yet she is strategically placed in the kingdom at a time where there is an enemy of the Israelites who wants to destroy them. And I think that as I read her story, I realize that we're all being strategically placed for a reason. Esther had the gift of wisdom and discernment, and the gift of beauty. It is a gift, and she was able to use that to save her people. And while we may not save nations per se, I do believe that God strategically places us with the gifts that we have in order to save others, in order to point people to him. And I want to know from you two, have you ever had a situation like that where you think about your story, you think about your gifts, and you know, God strategically placed me here for this?
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk about these events and these gatherings where I'm connecting with women, I'm talking about the perspective of what I've gained from it, but I know that those women who I've connected with have gained so much. I think one of my gifts that I talk about is being a storyteller, and I share very openly about my struggles on my journey to motherhood, to become a mother. I experienced back-to-back pregnancy loss. It was challenging, it was devastating, and it's a journey that I'm still on, you know, and I thank God for my beautiful daughter and his grace, and, you know, how I see that through her. But me sharing my story and me using my gift as a storyteller, whether it was in those private circles and small groups where I found healing, or whether it was after I felt strong enough to share it more publicly via social media or other opportunities where I've been called to share that story, has been freeing, not just to me, but the ripple effect is that it's been freeing to so many others. And so I thank God for the gift, and I also thank him for the problem. I didn't ask him for it.
Do you want to go ahead and put your Cash App out there in case somebody want to send you an offer?
Thank you for the gift
and the problem.
Come on.
Right? Because that gift wouldn't have been activated if I wasn't in that position of desperation, if I wasn't in that position of questioning why me, right? So in order for the peaks to be so beautiful, for those vistas and views to be so beautiful, for me to appreciate her in such a way, I had to undergo those valleys. I had to be in that low space for this to be that much sweeter and to be that much more valuable, not just to me, but like I said, to other women. So
that is so true. So I don't know about y'all, but I love superhero movies. I'm a big fan of like Marvel, X-Men. And have you ever noticed, like, especially when they do the origin stories for the X-Men kids, they never realize that they're gifted until there's a situation, right? Like Spider-Man doesn't realize that he has Spidey senses until there's danger. And he's like,
wait a minute.
He's like, oh snap, I can jump and I can, you know, those X-Men kids, they don't realize that they have like supervision or their situation, like, oh snap, I can hear your thoughts. I can disappear and I can change. And I think the same thing is true with us. Our superpowers, we don't oftentimes know them until we are in a situation where we have to use them.
That's good.
Come on, Holy Spirit, activate. All right, Michelle, what about you?
I think for me, it's been interesting. I think the course of my career, God has strategically placed me in incredible global organizations such as Starbucks and American Express and a couple of others, as well as Zion Church. Trust me, I was not leaving Zion out at all, right? And in that space of, it's been very strategic in that, so the work that I do has been an executive assistant for over 20 something years, right? And it's such an incredible career that actually I feel like is like, a lot of people just don't understand how wonderful it is, because it gives you proximity of whoever the senior executives and the leaders in the company. And so you begin to understand how they think and how they work. And then relationship wise, you end up becoming a conduit and the connection and the bridge for a lot of different people with them. And so in that space, it's helped me to really leverage how is it that you get from here to there. And the work that I do has been carving out a niche for myself that says, not just I'm coming here to be able to get your calendar together, or if you've got to get some lunch and some coffee, I can do all that. But at the end of the day, where God has strategically placed me, it has always been with executives who somehow need some kind of support with figuring out how to balance work and their personal life, right? And that's not something you can advertise for in a job description, right? Not. But God, you know, in the way that he works, secret weapon, he sends me on these assignments, and that's who I get paired with in these companies, right? And so being able to take that experience and what I've learned in the corporate sector, and when he's like, all right, now we need to use this in the kingdom, right? Wow, and then now we also want to use this for everyday women with the business that I've given you. We want to be able to take all of that. And so, as you said before, it's not just one pocket. My whole life is a song that is a tapestry that is married together to be able to do the work. And so that's how I see he strategically has placed me to be able to use the gifts, but then to be able to use it in a way that it solves a problem for a group or a niche of people.
I love how you frame that you've been using it in different pockets, because I think we talked about this earlier, and so I think it's a reoccurring theme to tease out the fact that God is limitless. Like his ways are beyond our ways, his thoughts are beyond our thoughts. Don't ever think that God can only use you in one sector, right? We oftentimes, and we do want you to serve at church, we want you to use your gifts here, but church is not the only place that God is calling you to. We cannot do Matthew 28:20, go out into all the world, if the only place that we're using our gifts and telling our stories is in church. So whether it's your home, it's your community, it's the grocery store, it's your job, ask God, like, Lord, what is my assignment today? If you only thought about using your admin gifts in Zion, I can't even imagine the amount of people whose families would be jacked up because they didn't have Michelle helping them navigate between professional and personal. There are a ton of people who are never going to come to church. I don't care how hip you think you are, our little go-go remix thing. I'm not coming to church, but I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'll have lunch with you, and you get to be the Bible that I am not yet reading. So I love that you says, like, just strategically placing us in different places. Like, don't limit yourself. God's not limiting you. So why, like, what's the purpose of that?
That's good. You become the Bible.
That's good. It's true.
That's good.
All right, so we're getting ready to wrap up, and I have a final question, then you guys can also share any thoughts. So we've been talking about purpose, and in the Bible, in Esther 4, one of the most popular verses that people who know the story knows that, who knows, but you've been called for such a time as this. What sticks out to me as I read that and prepared for this is the concept of time. And the reality that we like to think that we have forever and a day, but we don't. Like, the reality is we don't know what tomorrow is. Like, there is a time for you to use your gift that is strategic. And so my question to you all is, from your experience, either personal or others, what prevents us from being mindful of the time? What prevents us from living purposefully? What is it that keeps us from thinking like, hey, today I have a purpose to fulfill?
Fear.
One word.
Hands down. I do this exercise where I say, ask yourself why. If you have something holding you back, then ask yourself why a second time. You'll usually get past that surface answer to another emotion. And then when you ask yourself why a third time, 9 times out of 10, it's a fear-based response. And I don't want to go so deep into it, but there are some major sort of fear categories that we all, suffer from. And usually the thing that's holding us back from moving, because we know that time is finite, is fear, right? And so the antidote to fear is love. And so that's why I believe that the work around self-love and healing is so important, because once you unlock that, it's limitless for you, because then you're connected to that divine. That's your connection to your creator. So it's always fear. And we have a good friend who quotes this. I don't know if this is her quote or someone else's quote, but I just want to attribute it.
We're gonna put it out there.
She says this. She says, Slow obedience is disobedience.
Come on and preach a word.
That thing convicts me every time. Because I'm like,
Yes.
oh, well, once I do this, then I'll do that. And God is like, who are you negotiating with? What?
Who do you think you are?
You've been called to
Run
do
it back.
X, but here you are, strategic. That's one of my strengths too, trying to map it out. So I think, if I leave the listeners with anything, it would be that. Fear is the one thing that can hold you back from living out your purpose. And then what? You're done here, and you left stuff on the table
because you were afraid.
because you were afraid. Yeah.
And I love what you said is that the antidote to fear is love, because I think oftentimes we say faith, and I think faith is important too, but that faith has to be connected to your love for Christ, right? That love, that relationship that you have with God, the love that you know is real, that is sustaining, that the love that's going to keep you from falling. The love that you know is constant and faithful, that even if you make a mistake, he is still more than able to work it out.
It's in the word. Faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
Yeah.
It's right there. So, yeah.
I would say in addition to fear, because I think that is the big one, right? In addition to the fear, I think that it is feeling like we are missing out on something. Like we are truly Eve's daughters, right? And as Eve's daughters, I believe that we often focus on the one thing that we don't have, right?
Always.
That we get so focused on the one thing that we forget the bounty of everything else. And so that ends up getting us distracted in terms of what he's called us to do. And so I think when you couple that thing with fear along with the distraction of, but wait, this hasn't happened yet. And that right there paralyzes us for being able to say yes to anything else that he wants us to do.
Right.
Because all I'm focusing on is my energy and my time and my prayers are going to the one thing that has not manifested itself right then at that moment, So that's an additional thing to fear that I think kind of keeps us from not honoring the space.
That's good.
I love how you said we are Eve's daughter, because as you said it, I thought back to the garden. I was like, yo, you had everything. Like, I can only speak for myself, but I bet it was wonderful not to have a time of the month filled with cramps and pain and cravings. And you're like, I shouldn't eat chocolate, but I kind of want 3 Snickers right now. But she literally, I mean, let's also be real. The fact that you can be naked and unashamed, as women, let's be real. Not many of us are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put all my stuff out there. No, she had it, but she was distracted by the one tree. The one tree that God said, hey, don't eat that. Everything else was there. And I just don't want us all to miss living in purpose or to have consequences that have generational impact, right?
Yes,
Eve's one mistake is impacting us thousands, millions of generations later. And I think it's important for us to keep in mind that the decisions you make today aren't just for you. Somebody is hanging on your yes. There is a person, there is a community, there is a nation that needs you to be quick with your obedience, that needs you to be focused and not distracted, so that way you can be their answered prayer. Jonathan McReynolds and Molly Music have a song called Miracle. And I just love the line that says, you're a miracle. Because it's like we always are looking for a miracle, praying for a miracle, and it's like, that's you.
That's right.
Your stories, your gifting, your ability to get us from here to there, the way that you speak, the way that you open up the home, the way that you encourage people, the way that you do accounting and finance, your integrity, whatever it is, you're the miracle that somebody needs.
Amen.
And you can only be that miracle if you answer the call to use your gifts. Any final thoughts or words to the people?
I think the only thing I would say is just, I borrow this from Bob Goff, of that space of keep your palms open. My therapist recently shared this with me because I shared with her this because of my own childhood trauma. I tend to hold on to certain things in my life and I just don't because I'm afraid to let go, right? And so she said, but Michelle, the problem is if you don't open up your hands, God can't pry out of your hands the things that do need to be pulled out. But not only that, he can't put in your hands the things that need to be placed in. She said all in the crevices here, right? So when I think about what does that tangibly look like for me, I mean, Maddie knows because Maddie actually was from the beginning, I think, in the journey with me, having my palms open to the adoption process, going through that international process. And quite frankly, I don't even know, just from the space of would we have connected as initially, but because of that adoption process, right?
Yeah.
And so her reaching out and trying to connect, like, who's this person? And then now we become like really good friends, that she has been a key person to help my daughter to bridge the space from America to Ethiopia and retaining her culture. And so had I not had my palms open and said, okay, God, wait a minute, you want me to do what? But wait a minute, God, we still trying to pay Pepco over here. You know how much international adoption or any kind of adoption is?
It's not cheap.
And so being open to that, and now to see my daughter at home and to see how she has impacted our lives so much, and just all of the different things that have come together as a result of that, that's not even just connected to our family, but outside of that. And so if we can keep that posture of your palms open, ready to receive whatever it is that he wants to ask you to do, it's almost like him saying, hey, Joy, will you go do this for me? And when we are slow to be obedient or don't answer, it's like us saying, no. So that's important, I believe.
That's a convicting visual. The fact that we could be like, no to God.
I could take it or leave it.
Right.
Because that's almost how we treat it. As if I'll do it when I feel like it, when I have time, and when I can fit it in. That's how we treat the things a lot of times that he's calling us to higher ground to do.
I'm not, because we're going to be here for another 10 minutes. I will say this though, what I like about that visual is because being a Nigerian kid, I wish I would to my parents when they told me to do something, go, when I feel like it. The way Josie and Bobby would have snatched me up. And it's just like, so why would I do that to God?
Yeah.
Why? Like, respect him. Like, honor God by doing those kind of things. So thank you all so much. I really, really thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Maddie. Thank y'all for listening. I hope that this blesses you. This will be posted to YouTube at some point so you can watch it again, share it with somebody. I just want to encourage you to use your gifts, walk in purpose, and be obedient. Take care.